This webinar is being recorded and will be posted in the California Project Launch website. Here with us is Anna Gruber, who is the Maternal, Paternal, Child, and Adolescent Health Coordinator and Unit Administrator for the Alameda County Public Health Department. Anna will introduce our webinar presenters. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you, Lilia. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm very happy to announce and present to you our two presenters for today, Rita Lang and Ayana Kai Nalo. Rita Lang is a licensed marriage and family therapist who has worked in the field of human services for over 25 years. A graduate of San Francisco State University and Cal State University East Bay, Rita holds a Master's of Science degree in Educational Counseling Psychology. Her specialties include family systems therapy, dyadic parenting therapy, solution-focused therapy, adolescent child play, and expressive arts therapy. Rita has worked for a number of medical, school, and social service agencies providing comprehensive counseling services and believes in people's innate ability to find their way to health and healing. Rita's experience additionally includes program supervision, program development, and consultation expertise, working with a broad array of diverse communities. We are so happy that Rita currently works for the Alameda County Public Health Department in maternal, paternal, child, and adolescent health as a behavioral health clinical supervisor and program manager for our Blue Skies mental wellness team. Her consultation and program development work has been fundamental in implementing mental health integration efforts in our home visiting programs. Welcome, Rita.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning.
Good morning. And we also have Ayana Kai Nalo, licensed clinical social worker. She is also a child parent psychotherapy rostered clinician and has been working with children and families for nearly 30 years and in early childhood mental health field for the last 15. The California Center for Infant, Family, and Early Childhood Mental Health has endorsed Ms. Nalo as an infant and family and early childhood mental health reflective practice facilitator mentor. Ms. Nalo is also the former manager of early intervention services at UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital and is a member of the faculty of the Irving B. Harris Early Childhood Mental Health Training Program. As a member of the Harris Foundation Diversity Informed Tenants Work Group, Ayana Kai Nalo integrates diversity-informed principles from tenants and other sources into reflective supervision and infant mental health services, and also trains organizations and mentors in the implementation of tenants across infant and early childhood mental health and public health fields. We are also very happy that Ayana Kai Nalo is a consultant in our Project Launch program. Welcome, Ayana Kai.
Thank you, Anna.
I'm introducing the both of them and passing the baton.
Excellent. Okay, good morning, everyone, or afternoon from wherever you're calling in from. We're going to get started. I think the agenda is going to show up soon. Yes, I'm new at webinars, so I'm not sure how they work. So give me a little bit of a pass here while I figure it out. So I'm going to start with the objectives, and then we're going to go through some just general definitions for boundaries and some warning signs, and then some self-care strategies. Because one of the things that I have learned, and Rita and I have learned, and this will be kind of a conversation between us, is that one of the earliest warning signs for boundary violations is burnout and stress. And so that's why we're pairing these two together to give you a sense of being able to identify good indicators for yourself and then things that you can do to mitigate it. So we're going to get started. So our objective is to increase your awareness and understanding in your role as mental health consultants or practitioners or clinicians in the work that you do. So for maintaining boundaries with our families and the systems in which we support and serve. And it's also to improve your ability to self-reflect and make decisions in the moment about when you're heading into those dangerous territories. And again, to also give you a little bit of self-care, yumminess, I think Rita is the word, yumminess, to sort of help buffer yourself against them. All righty. So let's go through some of those basic definitions, and I'm sure many of you are aware of them, but I'd like to just make sure we're all on an even playing field here. So professional boundaries, that's the limits that protect the space between your professional power and your client's vulnerabilities. And it's mutually understood, it's unspoken, it's physical and emotional limits of the relationship between you as the service provider and your client's trust. I think it also includes to represent a set of cultural and professional derived rules of how service providers and their clients interact. And that is also culturally specific to the systems in which you work. So there are some things, and I'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through these definitions. Some things that I feel when you are within your own system, there are rules that are inherent in that, or cultural norms that we use. So fiduciary responsibility in relationships. And fiduciary is usually a law term, like between a benefactor and trustee, but I think it applies also in our cases because it's one in which a person has a particular knowledge, which we are as the service providers, and or ability accepts the trust and confidence and acts on behalf of another person, which is our client, and that's what we're doing all the time. And then the therapeutic relationship, this is a new slide, is a continuum of professional behavior that spans from an extreme or under-involvement, from extreme to under-involvement in a zone of what we call helpfulness, to an extreme of over-involvement. So it's just finding that balance, that sweet spot, not too much and not too little.
Yeah, can you say that again?
Not too much and not too little. And I think that is, as home visitors, we run the risk very easily because by nature we're going into the homes of our clients, and it can make it feel like there's a wall that's broken down and we're entering into what are some of the gray zones. And I think that's where some of the boundary violations will show up. I really like to point out the difference between friend and friendly. So when you're holding boundaries with your clients, they are not your friends. A friend is someone you like to spend time with, you go hang out, go to the movies. It's a person who you seek support from, or you help and give them support, and it's a mutual relationship. Friendly is you're showing kindly interest and goodwill, you're being cheerful and comforting, and it's serving a benefit or purpose, helpful purpose. But it's not your friend, you're just friendly. So I do like to make the distinctions. I often get asked, because our clients can sometimes begin to feel like our friends. But I like to sort of put up that grid to just show people, no, because with your friends, it's mutual, and you're doing things outside of the context of a therapeutic relationship.
Exactly. And I want to add to this, just to add a little fuel to the conversation. When we're working with colleagues, it can get even more complicated.
That's right.
Because colleagues become friends, or they feel like family in the workplace. And then we are opening ourselves often up to more boundary violations in those relationships. And if we don't have a place to reflect on that, that can become a slippery slope as well.
Absolutely. I'm glad you pointed that out, because a lot of our work is with our systems and our organizations, and those violations happen there as well. So thank you for bringing that in. Okay, more definitions. Boundary crossings, and we're going to spend some time on both these boundary crossings and boundary violations. But a boundary crossing is an intentional or unintentional sort of excursion across boundaries, but with a return back to establish the limits of the professional relationships. So you kind of dip in and go, oh, wait, I shouldn't have done that. So you come back and you say, oh, I just want to check in with you. I know I said I would call you tonight at 8, but that's kind of late, and I want to just say, no, that's not really during the work hours. I'm I'll call you tomorrow. And so that's like a little crossing. You dip in, you come back. A boundary violation, on the other hand, is they occur when the therapeutic boundaries are crossed and the service provider's needs are being met rather than the client's needs. And those are the ones in which you will definitely need to seek some support around from your supervisor and your whoever are the people who are making the decisions within your program. And those crossings are things that carry usually liabilities with them. This is why you would need to be reporting in. So violation potential. Every service provider, every mental health consultant, every clinician carries the potential to cross these boundaries. We are all human. So there are things that can be up in one moment for me, which make me more susceptible, which is why this piece around self-reflection is going to be so important. That would make me more susceptible to crossing one. So it's to level the playing field. We're all susceptible to them. I would also add that violation potentials are dynamic and change over time in response to our life events, our professional risk factors, and our personal vulnerabilities. This variation explains why a provider may have a low risk for making a violation at one moment and a very high one at a later time. Again, because we are people and there are multiple things impacting that. And they encompass a variety of external elements, like your work setting, your client type, your experience, and again, what's going on for you. An example I like to use currently is my son has gotten into the Peace Corps and he's going to be leaving to go to Morocco. Isn't that fantastic news, right? So of course I'd be excited. I may even go into a client's home and say, oh my God, my son is leaving for the Peace Corps. I'm human. I have this exciting news. That's something that I would share. And that's the end. But the part where I start to share that, oh my God, I didn't sleep tonight. I'm really worrying about my son. Oh my God, did he remember to pack that? Oh, I better make sure we go to the doctor. I'm getting into that really gray, murky, which I call yellow warning signs, that this is more about me and less about the client. So I'd like to give those kind of examples because I feel like I am human. Of course I'm excited. My son's going to the Peace Corps. This is fantastic news. I would share that, but that's as far as I would share. So it's not like I don't share something about what's happening for me, but I just don't make it about me, right? So that's kind of like the way I want to acknowledge that we all run the risk, but just be clear that when you go into the areas when it's no longer about the client and about you, then we're running into the areas of problematic, that are problematic. So let's do some of those warning signs, those yellow light warnings, I like to call them. Okay, we're choosing clients based on some factors, how they look, their age, what neighborhoods they're in, right? What's their social standing? We respond to personal overtures from our clients. Rita, tell me, where'd you meet your husband?
I think this is I love the yellow warning lights because based on culture and depending on what culture you come from, people they don't see yellow warning lights in the same way.
That's correct.
So oftentimes people tell me all the time, they say, well, I don't really even see that as a problem, Rita, because this is just how we do things. We connect and we get to know one another. And that is true. There are certain areas where people, depending on their cultural affiliations, they're a little less rigid about how boundaries are marked. However, the thing that comes up is when you don't see it at all.
That's
when
right.
you just start blending everything into one big pot. We're in this together. Everything is open. There's no line of delineation between professionalism and the work. That's when we really start getting into a slippery slope.
That's right.
And I think even culturally, we have to really be aware of that and have a go-to place to check out those relationships when we feel that they're starting to slip. We may not even know it.
That's
so we have
exactly
to have a
right.
way to kind of have a barometer on that.
Yeah, and a lot of these other yellow light warnings, I think, are things that are really particular to the way they're written are for mental health conditions. But I think for any home visitor, be it paraprofessional, home navigators, nurse, public health nurses, like these warning signs we all fall in the same sort of categories for being able to sort of dip ourselves over in them. So a few more of them, and I know you guys can see them, so I won't go through all of them, but it's also being in contact with clients outside of work hours. And again, I know we work in systems where our days are sometimes longer based on the availability of our clients, and so some of my home visits will not sometimes occur till 6 or 7 when parents are home and kids are home. If that's within the normal scope of what your work site offers, then it's fine. It's when you start to go beyond what is a normal scope of a home visit. So showing up at a 9 o'clock at night sort of home visit is not appropriate. And also being hesitant or embarrassed to discuss the relationship between yourself and a client with your colleagues. And I'm talking out of the scope of, what's confidential. I'm talking about when someone who may be also serving another role with that family and they're asking you about, oh, you went on your home visit and I've come in as a nurse and you're the mental health person and I want to kind of get a sense of what you've seen and you're withholding information of different elements or dynamics of what's happened. That's the kind of thing that you want to sort of see as a yellow light warning, because it means you're not completely, if you can't say it to everyone, then maybe it's something you should be, yes, it's that internal little sound that tells you in your gut that maybe you're entering into the slippery slope. And I think in today's technology, where we have social media,
oh my goodness. Yes.
And I want to be your Facebook friend or follow you on Instagram or Twitter. Okay, again, I don't know those things because I'm not on any social media, but I know it's something that has come up, and my easy answer is, because I'm not on it, is to just tell my clients, I'm sorry, I'm not on Facebook. So, but even if I were, you wouldn't need to follow. I wouldn't want you to follow me, and I don't want to follow you. I want you to have the privacy of your life. Just as my life is private for me too. But I think it's another one of those slippery slopes where we can find ourselves dipping into. So let's talk about some red flag behaviors. This is when we start discussing intimate or personal issues with our clients. So we're going to go back to my example of my son going to the Peace Corps, and then I'm going to start sharing with you, like I said, about my staying up late, worrying about him, and not sleeping and checking his luggage on the side because I want to make sure of what he's putting in there and what he's not putting in there. So all of those things are personal issues, right? As an example, it could be engaging in behaviors that could reasonably be interpreted as flirting. Again, keeping secrets with a client. That's another one where a client says, oh, just, don't
make sure you don't tell
anyone this.
Yeah, we have a team here, but please don't tell the nurse.
That's right.
Or please don't tell the health educator this side of the story.
Right, or our family partner, or navigator. That's exactly right. And believing that you are the only person who can truly understand what's happening for the client. That's another big red flag warning, because that is meaning something about your relationship becoming a little too enmeshed that only you can understand and relate to what's happening for the client. And then spending a little more time than necessary with that particular client. And I know we all have our favorite clients, and that may stay a little bit longer on our home visits because they're yummy, and the mom and the baby is just so delightful to be around. And so there's some parts of that I feel, okay, we all do that a little bit. But when you just stay and stay and stay, and you run out of real reasons to be there, it's usually a big red flag. And signs of all of these are subtle at first, so they can go off your radar, but we're trying to raise our awareness around them. So other red flag behaviors include, you know, you may be then speaking poorly to about your colleagues, as Rita was just sharing, like, well, if you're keeping secrets, but don't tell the nurse, or, then you may say, oh, but Nurse Sally, she doesn't really understand you like I do. Again, it's positioning yourself to be the all-being, all-knowing, and the one who can most help the client, the family. And showing favoritism, and we can do this with our resources. If you have diapers or gift cards or taxi vouchers, and you just kind of always are, you know, bringing them closer to you to give to a particular client. Again, not across all your client base, but, you know, one family that you want to always sort of keep that special thing for. That's a red flag. Meeting a client somewhere outside of a normal setting. And again, I know we have to get creative. We visit families who are impacted here in the Bay Area with housing, and they stay in housing with multiple families in one space, so it makes it really hard to see our clients there. So I may opt to say, can we meet at the park down the street, you and the little one, or can we meet, at a little cafe? If it's just mom and I, we're going to have a conversation. Again, that's within the normal scope of where we would meet as practitioners or service providers. When I start going outside of what normal is, that's again like those hours. If we normally can stretch our hours till about 6 or 7, great. Everyone can normally do that. So if we normally meet in public spaces like that, schools, hospitals, that doesn't count. It's when you're meeting outside of something that was within the normal sort of practice for your system. And I think this last piece about providing the client with your personal home phone number or email address, again, you know, not every system can afford to give everyone work cell phones. I know that happens sometimes. So you're kind of left with using your personal cell phone number. But I want you to be really clear that then you have to still treat it as a work phone, because you have to have hours in which you are no longer available, and you say you're no longer available. Because if it's your office work phone, you can just cut it off and say, it's off, I'm off work, and I will look at it, and you have a message saying I will respond tomorrow at 9 a.m. or whatever. But if you're forced to somehow use your personal cell phone, and I do know that this happens, that you have the same sort of boundary around cutting the time off so your clients do not have access to you 24 hours, 7 days a week. So, and this is not only happens for providers. I think clients can also demonstrate signs of over-involvement by asking questions, you know, about you as a service provider, and seeking personal information. So if this occurs where the clinician is more the person who's pulling for that, then I suggest that you, again, consult with your supervisor, a colleague, or someone to talk about that and see what is the agency's strategy and policy on that, so that we're all being consistent in our work and our care for our clients. Okay, so maintaining healthy boundaries. I have a quick guide to making a boundary decision. So you're at a threshold where there's a potential boundary concern. What are the implications if you cross the boundary? I would ask myself, what are the implications if I cross it? What are the implications if I don't cross it? What is the meaning for me as a service provider if I cross the boundary? And what is the meaning for the client? And then ultimately, what is the meaning for the program? And I do want to add that layer because some red flag violations have very strong implications for our, for our agencies in which we work. And so sort of having a way of going through it and thinking it through and checking in with someone else with checking in with yourself first and then with someone else around. How do I know if I'm entering into that? And for me, that's the first indicator. If I have to ask myself, I'm kind of wondering, is this okay to do with my client?
Right.
That's the first indicator that maybe, yep, it is something I should be talking to someone about. And so I really, really want people to hold that, like trust your own internal barometers. So questions to consider: is this in my client's best interest? Whose needs are being served? Again, is it serving my needs or is it serving the needs of the families I'm working with? How would I feel telling my colleague or supervisor about this? How would this be viewed by the client's family or significant other? How would the client's family even be thinking about it if I showed up at 9 o'clock? That would raise a little eyebrows, I think, in the family. Does the client mean something special to me? Am I taking advantage of the client? Does this action, again, benefit me rather than the client? So in thinking a lot about self-awareness, which I feel a lot of these questions come from, is being really in touch with where you are and being able to recognize it within yourself when you are on one of those slippery slopes and thinking about boundaries. So, I would pause and say, when am I more likely to violate a potential boundary? How would I recognize that? Where does it show up for me? And I'd really like to pause here and slow down enough for us to really think about that question. Like, in my body, where would I feel it? Do I get any warning signs? Am I more susceptible to it when I'm stressed out or burnout? And then I kind of take a more casual approach to my work because I'm too overwhelmed. But it's really slowing down and identifying for yourself, each of us, like where are my sort of trigger warnings and signs? Is it a client that really resonates with me because their story is very similar to me?
That's right.
That's one of those places. So to slow down and say, oh, I'm going to have to really be on top of this because I really feel a strong connection because this client's story is so much like my own. So just being able to bring your own self-awareness into the work in a way around potential violations, boundary violations and crossings, I think is so important. So identifying that, slowing down enough, even before you begin with a new client, slowing yourself down enough to ask yourself, okay, what are things that might be, like I said, triggers for me? This client lost a child, and this is now their first baby after that. That may be a place for me where I may sort of lean in a little bit more than I would. And, or this family is just chaotic as my family, or the family I grew up in, and it feels just like my own house. And so I blend in, I blend myself into it in ways that I don't do with other clients. And I really do like to stop and say, would I do this with every client? Not that I have to, but would I? And if the answer is no, I wouldn't, then I would slow down and ask myself why. Why am I doing a little bit more or asking a little bit more information or questions or hanging out a little bit longer with this client? So protecting your own boundaries. Be aware of your own needs, values, and attitudes. Be aware of your comfort zone. Remember that you are there to meet the client's needs, not for the client to meet your needs. When you're not able to do something, let your clients know And use your supervisor. They know and understand the complexities of your work better than anyone else. And so really make sure you're checking in. The key points I want us to remember before we go into what I hope is something that will help to mitigate, because again, I feel like one of the main culprits or reasons why we lean a little bit closer to those yellow warnings, yellow light warnings or red flag warnings is because of being burnt out and overwhelmed. So some of the key points I want you to remember is to set the stage at the very beginning. When you get a new client, talk about boundaries, talk about how you're going to be in relationship to them. Clients take their cues for what's acceptable behavior based on how we speak and act. So we have to be really clear on the onset of holding a professional stance very early on. And if for some reason it slipped away, by the time you do your next assessment, if it's 3 months or 6 months, you go right back to, oh, yes, I want to remind you that my role here is such and such, and these are the ways in which I will be able to service you. This is a good time to revisit that. So make sure that you're setting the stage early and often, because seemingly harmless comments from the professional or client can very quickly slide into a territory that's uncomfortable. And correct all infractions immediately. It is the professional's responsibility to reestablish the professional boundaries, regardless of who crosses the line. So if a client is the one, as I said, the clients are also susceptible to crossing boundary violations. It's really important that it is the professional who reestablishes them. So one of the things that you might could do is, as an example, where you, the client may be, again, really pushing you for meeting them someplace else or outside of what's normal, or coming at an inappropriate time. So one of the ways that I find is really easy to do is to say, oh, this happens even with like baby showers and birthday parties and weddings, because you feel like such a part of the family. And so early on, I set the stage and say, oh, I'm not able to attend, your celebrations. I really support the family, but I cannot do that in the capacity of my work here, and it's not appropriate for me to attend. That's the time for you guys to have and all of your family members. And so when the invitation comes later, it's really easy for me to refer back to it. So I would say, oh, no, remember? I'm so happy, and maybe little Johnny and I and you can do something to have our own little celebration, but I cannot attend Johnny's birthday party. And again, Rita, I like you're bringing up the cultural component, and this gets to be a real press, because how can you really be there for me if you don't show up for my families? And that's why I always have the sort of the alternative about within our work, we can have our own little celebration. This is the way we can do it. And it's important for you to know that, for me to say this to my client, it's important for you to know that where it's appropriate and not appropriate, because you may get other helping professionals that may want to attend that. It's really, that's for you and your family and the people who are going to be in your life for the rest of your life. And we're here for a time limited to do these services, to offer you these, and I kind of refer myself back to that point, and reestablish the boundaries, and even if it's something where I may have crossed it. So I'm going to keep using my Morocco example and say that I start to go a little bit into, God, I'm really stressing out about it, and if I can't say in the moment, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, I'm dealing with that. That's not why I'm here. Let me focus back on the work. If I can't say it in that moment, I will definitely come back around and say, hey, I thought about it a little bit. That wasn't okay. I know that you were very, you responded really well and you're very interested, but that's not okay. I'm here to provide a service for you. So let me apologize and let us continue with our work. And so I feel like it's important to circle right back around. And document both inappropriate behaviors and measures. So I would write down you know, in my notes or however I've documented when the client has said something, you want to be able to have a record of it. And again, if your work is like ours here, we get lots of those, like I said, invitations. Am I documenting every time I'm invited to a baby shower or a birthday party or no, but if there's something that I feel like it where it keeps coming up with the client or then I will. Like I would say, oh, the client keeps asking me to attend, and I've stated again that this is not something that, you know, is part of the work that I'm able to do, and just so that it lives somewhere.
I think this is such an interesting discussion, and it brings up a lot for me too, because I think as professionals, when we work and live in the community that we often serve our families and clients and home visiting and otherwise, it really sometimes can get to be a real exercise in where are your professional boundaries, you know, professionally. And I think social media really impacts this nowadays, because if you do open up yourself in somehow to be on Facebook or another mechanism with someone, then it opens up the parameters, and you have to be even more conscientious about what you're going to say back to people. In my experience, as I prepare to talk about provider help and some of the ways that we can take care of ourselves so we can remain conscious, is when I'm out there in the community, oftentimes people do invite me to come to the baby shower, come to the happy hour, come to the party. And the question I have to ask to you all is, remember, if you decide to take that opportunity, because sometimes people do, what will be the result of that? How much will you be willing to give up your own personal life and your own personal relationships when you're going to be seen in that community as not the so-called professional, but now a part of that family and community? And really, it can become a slippery slope, because as you become more integrated in that family and how those people see you and want to be with you, then you really have to say, well, do I want to give up all my time in this way? When does my time become the time of the family? And something that started out so innocently, and then it becomes more and more, because people do see you as a viable family member and someone who's available. You have to ask yourself the question, do I want to be that available all the time? And if you do, if you say, well, I think I can handle that, what is the impact on you in terms of burnout and availability? So I get that often. When I'm out in home visits, I tell people all the time that they'll say, oh, I'm here to see the mom and the baby, and then all of a sudden they bring out mom, bio mom, stepdad, sister, and then all of a sudden I'm like, am I in a whole family therapy session? I thought I just came to see the mom and the baby. If I don't set a really clear boundary, people just keep coming, and I really don't have the capacity to see the entire family in that way. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk a little bit about provider health as we're out there, you know, doing our jobs and doing our absolute best. We have to always try to remain conscious of how can we be our best self? How can we bring our best self to the work? And one of the things, I've been at this work for a long time, and one of the ways that you can sustain yourself and be able to be a good working professional, no matter what your role is by taking care of yourself. It's easier said than done, because there's lots of things that prevent people from getting help. For example, you know, we should not experience personal problems that we're just the savior, right? We can do it all because you know, we signed up for this job and we're professionals and we know better and we've been there. We also view personal problems as a sign of inadequacy. Oh, wow, you know, I should be able to handle this. You know, I've done this for a long time, or I signed up for this because I'm good at this. Or we think that there's no real safe place for us to get help. And I run across this a lot. People will say to me in supervisory relationships, well, can I really, in so many words, trust you? Are you going to go back to the system at large and talk about me because I can't handle the work? And what I always say to people is, I would really feel bad if I couldn't talk about you and be able to represent the complexity of the work. My job is to help represent the complexity of the work. We should always be aware that there's lots of helping resources out there. It's just, do we choose to access them? And we have helping skill sets to take care of ourselves. It is, do we remind ourselves to use them? We often also intellectualize or disassociate from the emotional impact of our problems. And I talk about this a lot in our work. What happens when we start to disassociate from the emotional impact, and then these start to become physical problems for us, or problems where we really don't feel we have the strength anymore to take on our work? This is really becomes a problematic scenario. We often counsel family, friends, and significant others about boundary violations, but then what about ourselves? So we can look at others, but then when it's turned to turn the mirror, we can't see it in ourselves. And I see this a lot too. We feel embarrassed to seek help. We say, oh, I'm a professional, I should know this, and yet we're crying silently in our own office or our own bathroom. As a result of the above, we often wait longer to get the help that we need and sabotage our own self-help. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we should not do that. Next slide, please. All right, so there's some prevention general principles that I want to speak to you all about. And this is to help us sustain us and to grow our own emotional resilience. That's what it's all about. We want to become aware of the symptoms of stress before they become severe. And we want to establish clear and realistic stress management goals. I tease my colleagues here and I said, well, when I came to work in the public health department, which is a large, very fast-paced, bureaucratic system, there's lots of things that go on in this system. So I had to up my self-care. And I tease my friends, well, I finished my day and now my second job begins. And that is all the stuff I have to do to take care of myself in a large, fast-paced system. And it becomes almost a job in itself. I'm trying to incorporate all the support and the planning that I need to be able to take care of myself, to come in here, not just looking good physically, but feeling emotionally competent to handle my job. And my challenge is to find the optimal level of balance of stress in order to thrive. Now that I want to say again to you all who are listening. It is really to find the balance to manage the stress. And I'll tell you all a little story. I just began working a 4-10 work schedule. We have the opportunity here to work 4 10-hour days, just like in lots of medical models or systems are offering this. And so I just started, and I was starting the 4-10s, and I tell my husband when I come home in the evening, man, I'm so tired, I have to go to bed at 8 to be able to get up early. I'm not an early riser to get there. But a lot of my colleagues who shared with me, and I had worked 4-10s before, abbreviated work schedules before, that it's well worth it, Rita. Once you get that extra day, you'll feel better. Well, I got my extra day, and I felt so much better. I just couldn't believe it, just that full day. And I told myself, because I do try to manage my stress, you know, I told my husband, I told my son, I told my best friend, don't call me, because I know you guys know this is my day. And I need the morning hours just to watch the sun come into my home and to just feel what it feels like to feel my own heartbeat. So it is very important for us to challenge ourselves to recognize the optimal levels of stress so that we can thrive. Next slide, please. There's also very important for us to support and recognize the high-risk nature of your work. Raise your hand if your work is stressful. Okay, I can't see you, but I'm just joking with you. If your hands are up and your work is stressful, we have to acknowledge that. It's one thing to just say, oh, my work is stressful, and just keep on doing it. It's another thing to say, you know, my work is stressful, and I need to start to take a look at that. Because if I don't take a look, you know, I had a friend who used to tell me, if you don't handle your business will handle you.
I know that.
You have to find a way to start to acknowledge the connections between your individual stress and your work-related stresses. And believe me, there is a connection. If your stress becomes so intense in your work and becomes so magnified in your work, do you think that stress goes away when you go home? It stays with you. So we have to learn how to balance our workloads, create a variety of tasks, walk away even during parts of our day from our work so that we can breathe and come back with a fresh perspective. Set good boundaries, as Ayana Kai was talking about, so that we know when we're overstepping our boundaries, and provide a proactive plan for coping. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about, is about that proactive plan of coping. Next slide, please. So one thing that's really important as well is to create a comfortable physical work setting. And I know we can't all do that. We don't all have big fancy offices. We don't always have lush and posh situations. But it's the little things that we can do in our setting. We can sometimes bring in a bouquet of fresh flowers. We can bring in a scent that won't be offensive to others in our workspace area that helps refresh us. We can set an opportunity to debrief difficult situations, and we can advocate for programs that bring in wellness. If your organization or your agency has an opportunity to bring in yoga, it can bring in daily walks, if it can bring in meditative moments or activities. These are all things that everyone benefits from, and believe me, in organizational change, when one is well, two is well, three is well. When we're well together. When we're sick together. So you know in your organization if there's a sickness that's brewing, and we want to be a part of bringing in, ushering in a healthy perspective. Bringing in humor. You know, one of my big, it's really important for me to have laughter in my team and to have team members who have a great sense of humor, because it goes a long way in helping us to focus and to be able to deal with the stresses of our work. And then again, work culture, appreciating the positive, having days where you recognize colleagues for the good things they do. It goes a long way in helping people to feel like they're managing some of the challenges of stress. Next slide, please. So here's some real good personal strategies. And one of the things when I do this talk a lot around people, they'll say, oh, Rita, I know this. I know about good nutrition. I know I'm supposed to be exercising. I know I should get 8 hours of sleep. Maybe I should even go out during the day and take a 10-minute nap in my car, or close my door, or lay my head on my desk and get some rest. My thing is, you might know it, but are you doing it? You have to choose the healthy option to be able to do things that make you feel better. To establish a buddy or a partner with a social connection who'll say, hey, Rita, you look a little tired. Come on, let's go over and grab a cup of tea. Can we walk around the block? Partner with someone who knows you, who feels comfortable and trusts you enough to say, you know what, today looks like it's a rough day. Can we go walk outside for 5 or 10 minutes? And spiritually, understanding that whatever we develop and whatever we do to take care of ourselves help us have better meaning and purpose to share with others. Next slide, please. So what do I do? Here's some things you can do. You can copy this, and again, it's one thing to take this list and put it in the bottom of your desk drawer. It's another thing to do it. I really do try to take a moment during my day where I do some deep breath work. I do lots of chair stretching, and I'm a master at daydreaming. When I come in the office every morning, I open up my window, I let the light flood in, because the light reminds me, just Rita, there's something else going on out in the world, and I want to connect with that. Doodling, complimenting yourself, complimenting your colleagues, sharing a favorite joke. And these are just all things that just take 2 minutes. Take a look at the list. Listen to your favorite music if you have your earplugs or your Walkman or whatever, so you can go inside and just be able to escape through the music. And again, walking and getting fresh air, breaking up your day. This is really important for home visitors, because often they go from one visit to the next and they don't really even set a barometer. They often tell me, well, I'm out in the field anyway, so I'm taking care of myself. Well, that's not necessarily true, especially if you're going into really challenging homes and environments. Next slide, please. Just take a look at this. I won't read them all, but in every one of our senses, there's a way that we can renew ourselves. We can renew ourselves through taste, bringing in something that's refreshing for your palate. I like mango. You know, I love to bring in mango, and it's just like, yay, I'm in the tropics. Or it can be the fresh smell of lavender. Or just, I have several sites, and I wish I should have included them in the PowerPoint, but that you can log onto and just listen to the sound of nature. And one of my favorites is crickets chirping, or waterfalls. With touch, you can stop and do a self-massage on your neck or on your pressure points on your fingers and your hands. Goes a long way in giving yourself a little renewal time. And then, again, in your workspace, no matter how small, in your office, even in your car, you can bring an item that brings you joy. And when you look at that photo or touch that blanket or hold that stone, it's a personal reminder that you are taking care of yourself.
We're going to have to go through a couple of these so we can allow a little time for questions. So Rita, I want to know if there's any other points that you'd like to make.
Well, I think the most important thing, again, is it's easy for people to say, oh, yes, I know these things. But my question always to people, you know them, but are you doing them? If you're doing any of these prevention strategies, it goes a long way. I've been in this field now for over 25 years, almost 30 years at doing this work, and I think I'm hanging pretty tough. Part of the reason is because each time and each opportunity I've learned that I do have to incorporate wellness in my work. It is not just a philosophy for me. Wellness really has to become, if you're going to stay in this type of work, in home visiting, and raise your hand if you know that the cases are becoming more challenging. If the interactions in our personal lives, if the global world that we're living in is not impacting us before we even get to work, these are all red flags where we know we must do things to take care of ourselves. So I guess my closing message is, don't just know it, do it. Put into practice whatever you can do, and it'll go a long way in helping you rejuvenate yourself so you still feel the passion of why you first got into the work.
Yeah, and that is excellent. And I think we have these two last quotes that so speak to what you just shared, Rita. One of them says, remember, to keep the lamp burning, you have to keep putting oil in it. And that's exactly what I hear you're saying. And the other one is, always remember, if your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete.
So right,
the work is hard enough, and the work we do is very hard, so you have to take care of yourself. So
it's really a combination of learning to set your own professional boundaries and finding those self-care practices that can keep you alive, because you know what? We need you in this work. We need qualified, competent, passionate people who care about families and who can make this world a better place through the hard work that we do.
Excellent. So thank you, guys. So if there are some questions now, we'll be able to answer them. Are the slides going to be available? That's one of the questions that have come up. Yes, the slides are going to be available. They're going to be available on the website, which you'll see. It's up there now? Okay, great. The Project Launch website. Are there any other questions?
Just one here, when will the recording be available?
I'm not certain of when.
It takes us a couple of weeks.
Okay, a couple of weeks to get the recording up in the, on the website.
So it'll be available within 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Someone who knew the answer.
Fantastic.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening in and spending the hour you had today with us. We hope that it was helpful.
And we'd like to remind you of our California Project Launch website, where you can find the recordings for this webinar series and also the contact information for Ayana Kainalo and Rita Lang. It's showing up in your slides now. And we also have one more webinar upcoming, and that's how to hire a mental health consultant, finding the right match for your program. And maybe Rita can give you a little bit of information. Rita? Okay, I don't hear Rita. But this is the information where you can register and log in.
We'd like to join us on this final installation of the launch webinars. This will be how to hire a mental health consultant, finding the right match for your program. It's really important to get that right person to do this work, and so that you have the glue to kind of hold your teams together. And that's what we'll be talking about some of the interview questions, some of the techniques, so that you can help build a strong and effective team. We hope to see you there.
Thank you. And we'll be signing off?
Yes, thank you, everyone. We're signing off there.
Okay. Have a good day.